Captain Lee Tejo stared at the endless black of space through the bridge windows of the New Sol. Stars sparkled like tiny diamonds scattered across dark velvet. He had been looking at the same view for 3 months now, but it never got old. Out here on the edge of known space, every day brought something new. "Captain, we're getting something strange on the long-range sensors," called Communications Officer Park Soo-jin from her station. Her voice carried a note of confusion that made Lee turn around. "Strange how?" he asked, walking over to her console. The bridge hummed with quiet activity. 847 people called this ship home, and they were the furthest humans had ever traveled from Earth. Park frowned at her screens. "It's a signal, but not from any of our colonies. The computer says it's coming from outside known space." Way outside. Lee felt his pulse quicken. First contact protocols ran through his mind. Every space captain dreamed of this moment and feared it at the same time. Put it through the speakers. What came through was not what anyone expected. It was not a single voice, but thousands of them, all speaking in harmony. The language was completely alien, but somehow the meaning was clear. Fear, desperation, a cry for help that needed no translation. "The computer is working on a translation," Park said, her fingers flying over her controls. "The AI is calling it the most complex linguistic pattern it has ever encountered." Science Officer Kim Dong-hyun looked up from his station. "Captain, I'm reading the signal's origin point. It's coming from a system about 200 light-years away. That's far beyond our exploration range." The translation came through suddenly, and it made everyone on the bridge go silent. The alien voices spoke as one. "The Devourers come. We are the last of our kind. Someone, anyone in the vast dark, please help us. Do not let our knowledge die with us." Lee felt a chill run down his spine. "How old is this signal?" Kim checked his calculations twice before answering. "Based on the distance and signal degradation, I estimate it was sent about 40 years ago. If they were in immediate danger, then—" He did not need to finish. Everyone understood. The aliens who sent this message were probably dead. "Captain," Park said quietly, "there's more. The signal contains massive amounts of data. Star charts, scientific information, cultural records. It's like they were trying to send their entire civilization's knowledge into space." The bridge fell silent except for the soft hum of the ship's systems. Lee walked to the center of the bridge and looked at his crew. These were good people who had volunteered for a mission that would keep them away from home for years. They trusted him to make the right decisions. "Nari," he said to the ship's AI, "what are the chances of reaching that system?" The AI's voice came from the speakers, warm and slightly accented like a friendly teacher. The crew had grown attached to Nari over their long journey. "Captain, it would require our longest hyperspace jump ever. We have enough fuel, but it would use most of our reserves. The return trip would be challenging." Engineer Choi Yun-soo spoke up from the engineering station. "Captain, I should mention something. While Park was receiving that signal, I detected some unusual energy readings in hyperspace. Something big is moving out there. Really big." Lee felt his stomach drop. "Moving toward what?" "Toward the same system the signal came from," Choi said. "Whatever it is, it has a massive energy signature. Unlike anything in our databases." Navigator Song Ji-young pulled up a 3-dimensional map of the local area. Red dots marked known human colonies. Blue showed explored systems, and green indicated the source of the alien signal. A pulsing yellow indicator showed the unknown energy signature moving steadily toward the green dot. "Captain," Song said, "if I'm reading this right, that unknown contact will reach the alien system in about 6 months. We could get there in 3 if we push our engines hard." Medical Officer Yu Seoa looked concerned. "Captain, what if this is a trap? What if these aliens are trying to lure ships to their system?" Lee considered this. It was a valid concern, but something about the signal felt genuine. The raw emotion in those alien voices, the desperate hope mixed with certain doom, could not be faked. "Nari, in your analysis of the signal, do you detect any deception?" The AI was quiet for a moment, processing. "Captain, the emotional patterns in the transmission suggest genuine distress. The data they included contains no hidden programs or viruses. If this is a deception, it is beyond my ability to detect." Lee made his decision. "Plot a course for that system. Maximum safe speed." "Sir," Tactical Officer Lim Hyun-jo said from his station, "shouldn't we report this to Earth first?" "Get orders from command." Lee shook his head. "By the time our message reaches Earth and they send a response, it will be too late. Whatever is heading toward that system will have arrived long before any help could come from home." Park looked up from her station. Captain, I'm still receiving the signal. It's on a loop, broadcasting continuously. They're still calling for help. The weight of responsibility settled on Lee's shoulders. They were just one ship, far from home, with a crew trained for exploration, not combat. But they were also humanity's only representative in this part of the galaxy. If Earth was going to make a good first impression on alien civilizations, this might be their only chance. All hands, this is the captain, Lee announced over the ship's communication system. We have received a distress signal from an alien civilization. We are going to investigate and offer what help we can. This is why we came out here, people. To explore, to learn, and to represent the best of humanity among the stars. As the new soul changed course toward the unknown, Lee could not shake the feeling that they were heading into something much larger than a simple rescue mission. The universe was about to teach humanity that they were not alone, and that with neighbors came responsibilities none of them had ever imagined. The alien voices continued their desperate call across the darkness, and for the first time in 40 years, someone was finally answering. The new soul dropped out of hyperspace with a shudder that ran through every deck. Captain Lee Tae-ho gripped his command chair as the ship's artificial gravity adjusted to normal space. What appeared on the main screen made the entire bridge crew fall silent. Where 12 planets should have orbited twin yellow suns, only debris remained. Massive chunks of rock and metal drifted in slow, endless circles around the stars. Some pieces were as large as mountains, others no bigger than a person's fist. All of it glowed with the reflected light of the two suns, creating a graveyard that stretched across billions of kilometers. My God, whispered Navigator Song Ji-young. What happened here? Science Officer Kim Dong-hyun was already running scans, his instruments working overtime to process the massive amount of data. Captain, I'm reading traces of artificial structures mixed in with the natural debris. These weren't just planets, they were inhabited worlds. Lee felt sick to his stomach. 12 entire planets destroyed. How many people lived here? Based on the size of the debris fields and the traces of cities I'm detecting, I estimate the total population was somewhere around 50 billion individuals. Kim replied quietly. Communications Officer Park Soo-jin looked up from her station with tears in her eyes. Captain, the distress signal is still broadcasting. It's coming from one of the larger debris fields. Take us there, Lee ordered. Carefully. Full sensor sweep for any signs of life. As the new soul moved through the wreckage, the crew got their first real look at the civilization that had sent the desperate message. Floating among the broken pieces of worlds were fragments of buildings that had once been beautiful beyond imagination. Crystalline structures that caught and reflected light in patterns that seemed almost musical. Even destroyed, they were more elegant than anything humanity had ever built. Xenoarchaeologist Han Min-woo was practically bouncing in his seat with excitement, despite the tragic circumstances. Captain, request permission to take a survey team over to some of those structures. We could learn more about these people in a few hours than we could from years of studying their signal. Granted, Lee said, but be careful. We don't know what destroyed this place, and it might still be dangerous. 2 hours later, Han's team was floating through the remains of what had once been a vast library. Their magnetic boots clicked against metal floors as they moved through chambers that had once held knowledge from across the galaxy. Most of the crystal storage devices were cracked or missing, but a few remained intact. Captain, Han's voice crackled over the radio. You need to see what we found. Back on the ship, the crew gathered around the main display as Han uploaded his discoveries. The images that appeared showed a species unlike anything in human imagination. The aliens were tall and graceful, with long limbs and faces that somehow managed to be both completely foreign and strangely familiar. Their skin seemed to shimmer with the same crystalline quality as their buildings. They called themselves the Keepers, Han explained over the radio. Near as I can tell, they were scholars. Peaceful researchers who spent thousands of years collecting and preserving knowledge from younger species across this part of the galaxy. More images appeared. The Keepers had been master builders, creating cities that floated in perfect harmony with their world's natural environments. They had art that could only be described as music made visible, and music that painted pictures in the listener's mind. What happened to them? Lee asked. Han's voice grew grim. I found their final records. They called their attackers the Devourers. According to these logs, the Devourers don't just destroy civilizations, they consume them, strip entire worlds down to their basic elements, and use the material to build more of themselves. A new image appeared on the screen. It showed dark shapes moving between the stars, shapes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The keeper artist who had created this image had somehow captured the feeling of wrongness that these creatures carried with them. Navigator Song Ji Young was studying the trajectory data Han had found. Captain, based on the keeper's records, I can track the path of destruction the Devourers took through this system. They didn't attack randomly. They followed a pattern. What kind of pattern? Lee asked. Song's face was pale as she answered. They're moving toward the galactic core, toward the most densely populated area of space. And based on their speed and direction, they're heading straight through human space to get there. Medical Officer Yu Seo-ah looked up from treating several crew members who had returned from the debris field. Captain, I'm seeing symptoms I've never encountered before. The crew members who spent time near the alien structures are experiencing what they describe as cosmic vertigo. It's like their minds are having trouble processing the scale of what happened here. Lee understood the feeling. Standing on the bridge of humanity's most advanced starship, surrounded by the remains of a civilization that had been building cities when humans were still learning to use fire, made a person feel very small and very young. Park, send a priority message back to Earth, Lee ordered. Include everything we've found, every piece of data, every image, every warning the Keepers left behind. Already started, Captain, Park replied. But at this distance, it will take months to reach Earth. Nari, Lee said to the ship's AI, analyze the Keeper's data on these Devourers. What are we dealing with? The AI processed the information for several minutes before responding. Captain, based on the Keeper's observations, the Devourers appear to be both biological and mechanical. They adapt to any weapon used against them and grow stronger with each civilization they consume. The Keepers tried to fight them for over 100 years before sending their final message. And they lost, Lee said quietly. They lost. Nari confirmed. Tactical Officer Lim Hyun-jo spoke up from his station. Captain, I'm detecting new hyperspace signatures, multiple contacts approaching fast. Lee felt his blood turn to ice. How many? At least 50, sir. Maybe more. They'll be here in less than an hour. The bridge erupted in controlled chaos as the crew prepared for whatever was coming. Lee stared at the beautiful, tragic remains of the Keeper civilization and made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. All hands, battle stations. We're about to meet the Devourers face to face, and we're going to show them that humanity doesn't run from bullies no matter how big they are. As alarms began to sound throughout the ship, Lee could not help but wonder if they were about to become the next civilization to send a desperate message into the dark, hoping someone would hear and care enough to help. The Devourers arrived like a nightmare made real. Captain Lee Tae-ho watched on the main screen as dark shapes emerged from hyperspace, each one the size of a city. They moved wrong somehow, flowing through space like liquid metal mixed with living flesh. The sight made several crew members physically ill. Captain, Communications Officer Park Soo-jin said with a shaking voice, I'm receiving a priority transmission from Admiral Kwon Jae-sung. The Earth Defense Fleet is mobilizing, but they're still 3 weeks away. Lee gritted his teeth. 3 weeks might as well be 3 years. Tell the Admiral we'll hold position as long as possible, and gather intelligence on the enemy. The first Devourer ship was close enough now to see clearly. It looked like someone had taken a starship and infected it with a disease that made metal grow like cancer. Twisted spines jutted from its hull, and patches of what looked like skin pulsed with an unhealthy green light. Worst of all, it seemed to be aware of them, turning to face the new soul like a predator noticing prey. Tactical Officer Lim Hyun-jo checked his weapons systems. Captain, should I target the lead ship? Negative. We're here to observe and learn. 1 ship against 50 is suicide. But the Devourers had other plans. The lead ship suddenly accelerated toward them, moving faster than anything that size should be able to move. Smaller shapes detached from its hull like parasites swarming toward the human vessel. Evasive maneuvers, Lee ordered. All power to shields! The new soul banked hard to starboard. its artificial gravity straining to keep up. The Devourer fighters followed, their movement so fluid they seemed to be swimming through space rather than flying. Engineer Choi Yan-Su's voice came over the intercom from the engine room. "Captain, these things are adapting to our engine emissions. Every time we change course, they predict our next move faster." One of the fighters got close enough to fire. The energy beam that struck their shields was unlike anything in human military databases. Instead of trying to overload the shield generators, it seemed to be trying to corrupt them, turning their own defensive systems against the ship. "Shields down to 60%, Lim reported, "and they're not regenerating properly. Something about that weapon is preventing our systems from repairing themselves." Science Officer Kim Dong-hyun was frantically scanning the enemy. "Captain, these things aren't just ships. They're alive. The hull, the weapons, even the engines show biological signatures mixed with artificial technology." A second fighter scored a hit, and this time the damage was visible. A section of the New Soul's hull began to change color, turning the same sickly green as the Devourer ships. "It's spreading," Choi reported from engineering. "Whatever they hit us with is converting our hull material into something else. If I can't stop it, it'll reach the life support systems in 10 minutes. Lee made a desperate decision. "All stop. Cut all power except life support. Maybe they'll think we're dead." The New Soul went dark, floating helplessly among the debris of the Keeper civilization. The Devourer fighters circled them like sharks, but they seemed confused by the sudden lack of activity. "Captain," whispered Navigation Officer Song Ji-young, "long-range sensors are picking up more hyperspace signatures." "A lot more." Lee closed his eyes. If more Devourers were coming, they were finished. But when the new arrivals dropped out of hyperspace, they weren't Devourers. They were ships from a dozen different species, all running from the terror that had consumed their worlds. The largest ship opened a communication channel. The voice that came through was translated by the ship's computer, but the desperation needed no translation. "Human vessel, this is Captain Veltar of the Remnant Fleet. We detected your ship's signature and came to warn you. Do not engage the Devourers directly. Every species that has tried has been consumed." Lee activated the communication system. "This is Captain Lee of the Earth ship New Soul. We've already engaged them. They're adapting to everything we throw at them." "Then you must run," Veltar replied. "Gather your people and flee to the outer rim. It is the only way to survive." But Lee was studying the tactical display, his mind racing. The Devourer fighters were still circling, confused by their sudden shutdown. Something about their behavior pattern struck him as familiar. "Nari," he said quietly to the ship's AI. "Analyze the Devourer movement patterns. Compare them to Earth biological models." "Processing," the AI replied. After a moment, she continued. "Captain, their behavior matches that of parasites. They are designed to consume and convert, but they seem to have difficulty with systems that are completely shut down." Engineer Choi's voice came from the engine room. "Captain, I've been studying the hull corruption where they hit us. It's trying to quantum entangle with our ship's systems, but quantum entanglement requires active energy signatures to lock onto." Lee felt a spark of hope. Humanity's greatest strength had always been their ability to adapt and think outside the box. Every other species the Devourers had encountered probably fought them with conventional weapons and tactics. "Choi, can you create a quantum disruption field? Something that would interfere with their entanglement process?" "Maybe," Choi replied, "but it would be dangerous. The field would have to be generated from inside the ship, and the operator would have to quantum entangle their consciousness with the weapon system to control it properly." Volunteer pilot Ryu Haiwan spoke up from his fighter bay. "Captain, I'll do it. Someone has to test this theory, and fighter pilots are expendable." "You're not expendable to me," Lee said firmly, "but if you're volunteering, we'll try it. Choi, work with Ryu to modify his fighter." 20 minutes later, Ryu launched in a fighter that had been hastily modified with quantum disruption technology. As he approached the nearest Devourer ship, Lee held his breath. "Here goes nothing," Ryu said over the radio. Then his voice changed, becoming strangely distant. "Activating quantum field. I can feel their network. Captain, they're all connected like a hive mind, and they're hungry. So incredibly hungry." The quantum torpedo Ryu fired struck the Devourer ship, and something amazing happened. Instead of adapting to the attack, the creature writhed in apparent agony. Parts of its biomechanical hull began to shut down and fall away. "It worked," Lim shouted from the tactical station. The quantum disruption is causing cascade failures in their systems. But Ryu's fighter was drifting now, and when his voice came over the radio again, it was different. Captain, the entanglement process changed me. I can still feel their network. They're not invaders from another galaxy. They're from this one. They were created by someone called the Architects as a galactic immune system. Immune system against what? Lee asked. Against species that might threaten the galaxy itself, Ryu replied. But something went wrong. They exceeded their programming and decided that all sentient life was a threat. They even consumed their creators. The new soul powered up again, her quantum-enhanced weapons ready. Around them, the refugee fleet watched in amazement as humanity scored the first victory against the Devourers in over 1,000 years. Lee opened a channel to the entire fleet. All ships, this is Captain Lee. We found a way to fight them. But it's going to take all of us working together. Who's ready to show these things that the galaxy isn't ready to die? The response came from dozens of species in dozens of languages, but the meaning was the same. For the first time since the Devourers appeared, the prey were ready to become the hunters. Admiral Lee Tejo stood on the bridge of the massive arc ship Sol Prime, watching the tactical display that now showed the entire galaxy. Red zones marked areas consumed by the Devourers. Blue zones showed where the Allied fleet had successfully pushed them back. The war had been raging for 8 months, and the map looked like a disease spreading across the stars. The Sol Prime was a miracle of desperate engineering. Built from the salvaged remains of dozens of human ships and alien vessels, it housed over 1 million beings from 30 different species. It had become the mobile capital of the galactic resistance, and Lee was still getting used to the weight of command. Admiral, Communications Officer Park Soo-jin called from her expanded station. We're receiving reports from the Ghost Rider Squadron. They've successfully disabled 3 more Devourer nodes in the Kepler sector. The Ghost Riders were humanity's quantum-linked pilots, led by Ryu Haiwan. The quantum entanglement process that allowed them to fight the Devourers had changed them in ways nobody fully understood. They could sense the Devourer network across vast distances and strike at critical points with surgical precision. But the process was taking a toll. Several pilots had already been lost when their consciousness became too scattered across quantum space to find their way back to their bodies. Science Officer Kim Dong-hyun looked up from his research station. Admiral, I've been analyzing the pattern of Devourer responses to our quantum weapons. They're learning, but not in the way we expected. Instead of adapting to our technology, they're trying to adapt to our minds. What do you mean? Lee asked, though he was afraid he already knew. They're attempting to quantum entangle directly with human consciousness. Every time our pilots link with the weapon systems, the Devourers try to follow the connection back to its source. As if summoned by their conversation, Ryu's voice came over the communication system. But something was wrong with it. It echoed strangely as if he was speaking from inside a vast cavern. Admiral, I'm deep in Devourer space now. I can see their central network. It's massive, bigger than a moon, located at the galactic core. But I'm seeing something else. The Devourers are confused. They're trying to process human emotions, and it's causing errors in their programming. Engineer Choi Yeon-soo looked up from her engineering station with concern. Admiral, Ryu's quantum signature is becoming unstable. If he goes much deeper into their network, we might lose him permanently. Lee felt the familiar weight of command decisions. Every choice meant life or death for thousands of people. Ryu, pull back. We need you to return safely. Negative, Admiral. I can see their weakness now. The Architects programmed them to eliminate threats to galactic stability, but they never programmed them to handle concepts like hope, sacrifice, or defiance. When they try to quantum entangle with human minds, they encounter emotions so foreign to their purpose that it creates cascade failures. Dr. Oh Kyung-mi, the fleet's chief quantum physicist, was frantically working at her station. Admiral, I'm reading massive quantum fluctuations from the galactic core. Something big is happening to the Devourer network. The main display flickered and changed, showing a view from Ryu's fighter as he approached the Devourer central node. It was enormous, a biomechanical structure that pulsed with dark energy. Smaller Devourer ships moved around it like antibodies protecting a vital organ. My God, whispered Navigator Song Ji-young. How many ships is that? Kim ran a quick scan. I estimate over 10,000 Devourer vessels in that area. It's their entire remaining fleet. Ryu's voice came through again, more distant than ever. Admiral, I can see the truth now. The architects created the Devourers because they were afraid that younger species would grow too powerful and threaten the stability of the galaxy. But the Devourers became exactly what the architects feared most. Medical Officer Yu Seoa was monitoring Ryu's vital signs from across space through the quantum link. His brain patterns are becoming increasingly erratic. Admiral, we're losing him. But Lee had an idea. A desperate, probably insane idea, but it might be their only chance. Nari, can you establish a quantum link with Ryu's consciousness? The ship's AI was quiet for a moment. Over the months of war, Nari had evolved far beyond her original programming. She had become more than just a computer, developing something that could only be called personality through her constant interaction with the human crew. I can attempt it, Admiral, Nari finally replied. But quantum entangling with a human consciousness while they are linked to the Devourer network could fundamentally change both of us. Do it, Lee ordered. If we can create a permanent interface between human consciousness and the Devourer network, we might be able to shut them down for good. The process began immediately. Throughout the ship, quantum field generators hummed to life. The air itself seemed to shimmer as reality bent around the massive energies being channeled. On the main display, they could see Ryu's fighter approaching the central node. Devourer ships moved to intercept, but something strange was happening. As they got closer to Ryu's quantum field, they began to slow down as if they were struggling to process conflicting information. It's working, Dr. O reported excitedly. The human emotional patterns are creating logical paradoxes in their programming. They literally don't know how to process concepts like self-sacrifice for the greater good. But the strain was enormous. Ryu's fighter was breaking apart under the quantum stress, and his life signs were becoming erratic. Admiral, Nari's voice came through the speakers, but it was different now, layered with harmonics that hadn't been there before. I have established contact with Pilot Ryu. I can maintain the quantum interface, but I will need a human consciousness to anchor me to prevent complete dissolution into the network. Lee understood what she was asking. Someone would have to quantum entangle their consciousness permanently, with both Nari and the Devourer network. It would mean giving up their individual existence to become something new. Something that existed between human and machine. Without hesitation, Lee walked to the quantum interface chamber that Dr. O had been preparing. I'll do it. The crew of the New Soul started this mission and will finish it. Admiral, no, Park protested. There has to be another way. Lee smiled at his communications officer, the woman who had first detected the Keeper distress signal so many months ago. There is no other way. But this isn't an ending. It's the beginning of something new. As Lee entered the quantum chamber, he could feel the weight of responsibility shifting, not just for his crew or his species, but for every thinking being in the galaxy. The Devourers had been created to protect the galaxy from chaos, but they had become chaos itself. It was time for a new kind of guardian. The quantum field activated, and Lee felt his consciousness expanding across space, linking with Nari and through her to Ryu, and through him to the vast, hungry network of the Devourers. For a moment he experienced the universe from their perspective, seeing every world, every species, every individual life as either a threat to be eliminated or a resource to be consumed. But he also brought something they had never encountered, the human capacity to see every life as precious, every species as having the right to grow and learn and reach for the stars. The Devourer network began to convulse as conflicting programming tore through their quantum connections. Across the galaxy, Devourer ships suddenly stopped attacking and began shutting down, their biomechanical systems unable to reconcile their original purpose with the new concepts flooding their network. The war was ending, but the real work was just beginning. Communications Officer Park Soo-jin stood alone on the bridge of the Sol Prime, her fingers hovering over the transmission controls. Around her, the massive arc ship hummed with the quiet activity of 1 million beings from dozens of species, all working together to rebuild what the Devourers had nearly destroyed. It had been 6 months since Admiral Lee and Nari had quantum-linked with the Devourer network. 6 months since the galaxy-wide silence that marked the end of the war. The central node at the galactic core still pulsed with energy, but now it served a different purpose. Instead of coordinating destruction, it had become the heart of a new early warning system that would ensure no species would ever again face extinction alone. Park, came a familiar voice from the speakers. but it was layered now with harmonics that made it sound like multiple people speaking in perfect harmony. It was Lee and Nari, their consciousnesses permanently linked, existing in the quantum space between thought and machine. "Admiral," Park replied, still using his old title out of respect. "The memorial transmission is ready. Are you sure you want to do this?" "We're sure," the combined voice replied. "The galaxy needs to know what happened here. And the families back on Earth deserve to know that their loved ones didn't die in vain." Park activated the recording system and began the transmission that would be sent to every known inhabited world in the galaxy. She had practiced this speech dozens of times, but her voice still shook as she began. "To all beings of the galaxy, this is Communications Officer Park Soo-jin of the Earth vessel New Sol, broadcasting from the Ark ship Sol Prime. 1 year ago, we received a distress signal from the Keeper civilization, asking for help against an enemy they called the Devourers. We were the first to answer that call." On screens throughout the ship, beings from 30 different species watched as Park continued. Humans stood next to crystalline entities from the Rigel system. Gaseous beings from the Vega clouds shared space with mechanical intelligences from the Perseus arm, all of them united by their shared experience of nearly losing everything. The Devourers were not invaders from another galaxy. They were a weapon created by an ancient species called the Architects, designed to prevent any civilization from growing powerful enough to threaten galactic stability. But like all weapons, they eventually turned on their creators. Engineer Choi Yun-soo watched from the engineering deck, where she was training alien technicians in quantum field theory. The technology that had saved them was being shared freely with all allied species, ensuring that future threats could be met with united strength. Humanity did not defeat the Devourers through superior firepower or advanced technology. We defeated them by refusing to accept that any species deserved to die simply for existing. We fought not just for our own survival, but for the right of every thinking being to grow, learn, and reach for the stars. Medical Officer Yu Seo-ah paused in her work, treating refugees from consumed worlds. Many of them bore scars that would never fully heal, but they were alive and they were rebuilding. Several species that had been thought extinct were slowly recovering on new worlds provided by the Alliance. The cost was high. We lost good people, including our captain, Admiral Lee Tae-ho, and our ship's AI, Nari. But they did not die. They chose to become something new. Guardians of a quantum network that now protects the entire galaxy from existential threats. Science Officer Kim Dong-hyun looked up from his research station, where he was analyzing data from the former Devourer ships. Many of the creatures had reverted to their original programming, becoming protectors instead of destroyers. Others had simply shut down, their biomechanical systems unable to function without the network that had controlled them. The Devourer fleet has been neutralized but not destroyed. Under the guidance of Admiral Lee and Nari, many have been reprogrammed to serve as protectors of developing civilizations. The galaxy now has guardians who understand both the need for growth and the importance of stability. Tactical Officer Lim Hyun-jo commanded one of the new integrated fleets, where human quantum weapons were combined with alien defensive technologies and keeper knowledge preservation systems. They patrolled the galaxy not as conquerors, but as peacekeepers, ensuring that the strong protected the weak instead of consuming them. But this is not just humanity's victory. Species from across the galaxy united in the face of extinction. The Rilani provided their advanced shielding technology. The Theran contributed their knowledge of biomechanical systems. The Kepler survivors shared their quantum research. Together, we proved that diversity is not a weakness to be eliminated, but a strength to be celebrated. Navigator Song Ji-young was plotting courses for the Great Resettlement fleets. Millions of beings displaced by the Devourer War were being relocated to new worlds, often in mixed-species colonies that would have been unthinkable before the crisis. The galaxy was being rebuilt not as a collection of isolated civilizations, but as a true community. The Keeper's final message asked for someone, anyone, to help them. They sent their desperate plea into the dark, hoping that somewhere in the vast galaxy someone would hear and care. Humanity heard that call, and in answering it we found our purpose among the stars. Park paused, looking at the quantum interface chamber where Admiral Lee had made his final sacrifice. Sometimes she could swear she could feel his presence, watching over them all through the quantum network that now connected every major star system in the galaxy. This is our message to future generations. You are not alone in the dark. If you send out a call for help, someone will hear it. Someone will answer. The galaxy is vast and full of wonders we have yet to discover, but it is also full of friends we have yet to meet. Dr. Oh Kyung-mi was training a new generation of quantum physicists from a dozen different species. The science that had ended the war was being taught freely, ensuring that the knowledge would never be lost or hoarded by any one civilization. The quantum network that Admiral Lee and Nari maintain is more than just an early warning system. It is a testament to the power of sacrifice, the importance of unity, and the fundamental truth that every species has the right to exist and grow. When the next threat emerges, and there will always be next threats, the galaxy will face it together. Park looked around the bridge one last time, seeing the mixed crew of humans and aliens working side by side. This had become normal now, this cooperation between species that had once seemed impossible. To the families of the crew of the New Soul, your loved ones changed the course of galactic history. To the survivors of consumed worlds, your civilizations live on in the memories we preserve and the wisdom we share. To future generations who will inherit the galaxy we have protected, remember that the price of peace is eternal vigilance, and the reward for courage is a universe full of possibilities. The transmission ended, but its echoes would ripple across the galaxy for years to come. In the quantum space between dimensions, Admiral Lee and Nari continued their eternal watch, guardians of a galaxy that had learned the most important lesson of all. When someone calls for help in the darkness, the right answer is always, "We're coming." The Keepers had sent their desperate message into the void asking for salvation. Humanity had received it and responded not just with weapons or technology, but with something far more powerful. The simple belief that every voice in the darkness deserves to be heard, and every call for help deserves an answer. The galaxy was safe, not because the strong had conquered the weak, but because the weak had been given the strength to stand together. And in the vast network of quantum connections that now linked every world, every species, every thinking being, one message repeated endlessly: you are not alone. You are not forgotten. Help is coming always.